Welcome, everybody. This is the 29th episode of Let's Do Lunch, and today is Thursday, so we'll be having our RightTech roundtable. So on today's show, we have Jeff King, who is chairman of DDEX. We also have Dick Huey from Jaxsta, and then Paul Sweeting from Concurrent Media will be our host. So let me turn it over to Paul. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Ned. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the RightTech Roundtable. Thank you all for joining us here today. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy in these rather anxious times. We have a very interesting, I think, a very interesting topic for today. We're going to be taking a deep dive into music metadata. Little bit of a wonky topic, but one that is highly relevant to those of us in the industry. Before we get started, I just wanted to call out a couple of interesting headlines from the RightTech world in the past week. A survey by cordcutting.com, which unsurprisingly tracks cord cutting in the video space, found that 44 million US adults use borrowed login credentials to access streaming services. That's a huge number. It's expanded greatly since the COVID-19 lockdown has kept everybody inside. It also has to do with the fact that there is so much cutting of the cable and satellite cord. Many people are signing up for additional streaming services and finding that the cost of having multiple services can add up quickly to where it almost rivals the cost of the cable service that they got rid of. And that's evidently spurring a certain amount of sharing of credentials. The reason it's more than just funny is that insofar as licensing deals, content licensing deals for different services are pegged to subscriber count. It means subscriber count or viewers, or if there are significantly more viewers than subscribers, the licensor is getting shortchanged in that exchange. So that's definitely something that is probably going to become a hot topic of discussion among video rights owners, if it isn't already. There was also a very interesting report this week in Music Business Worldwide, which bears directly on our topic, or part of our topic for today. And that is that Sony Music has begun recruiting a new team, a new unit or division that, according to the job listings, will be, quote, dedicated to reimagining music through immersive media, unquote, and would be leveraging Epic Games' game engine called the Unreal Engine. And a game engine is just it's software that accelerates the process of developing new games. So clearly they're starting to think in terms of or along the lines of the recent experience, for instance, the recent virtual concert that Travis Scott did via the online game platform Fortnite, which we'll be talking about a little bit later in the webinar. So with that, let me invite our two eminent panelists to join me. Is Dick?
Oh, there's an eminent
okay.
panelist.
So yes, very, very eminent. Dick Huey is a longtime music industry bon vivant consultant.
I like bon vivant too.
Bon vivant, okay. And he currently serves as head of partnerships for the Australian-based company called Jaxsta, J-A-X-S-T-A. Did I get that right? Which is a really cool company that provides, compiles and provides music credits and metadata, both for consumers and for service providers. And he's going to be showing us a little bit of it in a few minutes. We also have with us Jeff King, who most of you probably know as the Chief Operating Officer of SOCAN, the largest Canadian performing rights and I guess now also mechanical rights too, that you represent as organization. But he's here today as the recently named chairman of the board of directors of DDEX, the Digital Data Exchange Consortium that develops metadata standards and interchange metadata exchange formats for the entire music, digital music value chain. So welcome to you both. Thanks for joining us. So let me talk. Let me start with Jeff. That was a very cursory overview I gave of what DDEX does. Maybe you could fill us in a little bit more. I mean, you have what, 7 or 8 different standards that you've developed, or families of standards that you've developed, stretching all the way from the recording studio to the consumer app. Can you tell us a little bit more about where you're focused?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Paul, and it's great to be here and partake in these Let's Do Lunch sessions. Yeah, DDEX, the Digital Data Exchange, has existed for about 15 years. It has about 120 members. Members pay a fee to be part of it, and but anyone can use the standards for free. And really what the DDEX's mission is to help connect the different pipes in the industry around the flow of information, and ultimately the ease of, and facilitate licensing and distribution and identification and discovery, all the different parts of the ecosystem so that it flows in the best way possible. There's about 5,500 adoption licenses out there. 5,500 people are using DDEX in their daily work. Generally, in my humble opinion, that I think anyone who's serious about being in the music business, be it a rights holder or a rights administrator or a DSP or distributor, you're using DDEX. If you're not using DDEX, I kind of wonder about the focus and how much you're really into this space. It's a rights standards body, so there's a lot of collaborative work amongst the different colleges, rights holders and users and different things like that.
Let me stop you there. Who is DDEX? Who are the kinds of companies that are?
Yeah, so some of the kinds of companies include digital service providers like Apple and Google and Netflix and the like. Also other smaller streaming services that are not household names in every market, but are household names in their own market. But there's also rights holders for the performer rights, like the labels, both large and small, and indie, and the Sonys and Universals, and then also rights administrators, the collective management organizations such as SOCAN, and the SSMs and ASCAPs and BMIs of the world are all part of this universe, and we all have a different role to play and a different perspective about, really, I do like the analogy of connecting the pipes and helping make sure it flows in a smart way. We can't have the Wild West. That's how trouble starts. And so those are the types of companies that are in there, like any sort of wedding speech or Oscar speech. I'm sure I've forgotten a couple, and but it's like the who's who of the industry. And yeah, go ahead. You're just a couple other things. You're quite right about there's eight groups of families. We could go down in the minutia of the detailed engineering of them, but in general terms, you're right. It's around the creation, right from the RIN standards. What we call RIN standards are around what gets created in the studio, and the whole creation aspect, to the end user, which is really connected largely to some of our MEAD standards, which is and with the rise of smart speakers, it's become very important.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that. MEAD is I think the most recent standard that you have promulgated. What was the thinking behind MEAD, and what does it do?
Yeah, it's really what it is. It's anticipating the disappearance of the screen, and so smart speakers and different things like that, where instead of typing in "I want to hear this song" or something, you're speaking to a speaker saying, "Play something by Drake," or "Give me something with a female speaker that says yeah, 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 you know the one," that type of thing. And you have to have ways to help identify and connect those, not just for the user experience to make that as strong and as good as possible, but also to make sure that the right people get paid the royalties for it, right? And to make sure it's licensed properly and all those things. You're quite correct. That is the most recent standard that we released. It came out in October of 2019. It was about 2 years from ideation to launching it, which, believe me, in the standards world is like moving at the speed of light, to have that many different stakeholders and move that quickly. But I think it was driven by common interests and common goals. We work together on DDEX. Is one of the things that's really good about DDEX, is that we work as a community around solving these things to try to move the whole ecosystem forward, as opposed to I'm in my corner, someone's in their corner, and let's this is meant. The rivalries and competitive forces are gone, and we're working together as key stakeholders.
So who has, or who all is implementing or adopting MEAD? Is it the smart speaker folks? Is it the service? Is it the DSPs themselves?
Well, yes. Really what it is, it's the DSPs using it to help for the identification of the recordings and the underlying compositions being used, but also when the information is fed back out to the rights holders, the labels, the publishers, and the collective management organizations and other sort of PROs of the world, they're also using elements of it to connect it together. It's actually a very elegant solution to what could have been a very complex problem that could have set the industry back for a decade. And DDEX should be rightly proud of the work they did on this. I've been the chairman for a month, so I can't take much credit for this one, but they did tremendous work to get us there.
This didn't all happen in the last month?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. DDEX is quick, but maybe not that quick.
Maybe not that quick.
But having said that,
I do like your analogy about connecting the pipes, though. But right before we went on here, we were all comparing basement flood nightmares. So even DDEX, we have our own hot water heaters floating around that we have to help work on. So okay, so thanks for that, Jeff. Dick, so I've been watching the development of Jaxsta for a while now. I remember seeing early demos of it, maybe as far back as 3 years ago. I think first time I saw it was actually in Norway at the Kristiansand Roundtable.
Yes, it was.
Maybe the first time I saw it, and you've shown little pieces of it since then. It's now launched, fully launched, and basically it's a database of music credits that is who played what instrument, who was at the soundboard, who did the mixing, who did the engineering, who did the. It's an incredibly rich database. How in the heck? Well, first of all, how did you actually compile this thing? I mean, it seems like a monumental task.
It's a monumental task. you know, if as Jeff just described, if DDEX is the plumbing, then you know we're at one of the ends of the plumbing, and you know at the end of the plumbing we have over 105 million individual credits, 42 million individual web pages, 27 million releases. I mean, it's a substantial database product. The guts of it, fortunately, I'm not responsible for. We hand that off to our CIO, who's not with us today. But it's an exciting product because it differentiates itself in the marketplace because it's an official music credits platform.
What does that mean?
So what I mean by that is, in contrast to most of the other party metadata sources on the internet, all the data that we receive comes directly from a rights owner. So there's no user uploaded information in the database, other than a few very light touch pieces that I'll show you in a minute when we go and look at the product. But it's exciting from that perspective. So what you're getting is, for the first time, an actual picture of what the music business and music entities consider to be the provenance of music. You know, we all know that with the appearance of digital music, in many ways we lost liner notes. They just disappeared.
Yeah.
And they're slowly coming back. It's great to see individual DSPs starting to filter out portions of the liner notes into their products. We hope to accelerate that at Jaxsta. That's certainly one of our targets.
So yeah, let me stop you there. So there's sort of three flavors of Jaxsta, it seems to me. One is there is a consumer-facing portal. You can go in and look up music credits. I guess you also provided essentially as a service to to other service providers, so that a DSP can integrate your data into their consumer-facing presentation. And there's also a pro version, which is aimed at people in the industry who it's something like a LinkedIn for people in the industry. You can have your own credits up there. It's also enables collaboration and outreach to people. You recently announced that you're making that free through the end of the year, presumably in response to the current lockdown that we're all under, and the difficulty that many in the industry are having, sort of developing, finding, and doing work. Is that right?
Paul, you're stealing all my great talking points.
Okay, sorry.
But you're right. That's exactly right. We are making the product free, and to your point about 40% of internet users borrowing people's logins, you don't need to do that with Jaxsta. Anybody watching this presentation today, please go to jaxsta.com and sign up for your own free, for the rest of this year, pro subscription. And yes, it was in response to COVID. And yes, it was in response to wanting to assist the music business with getting back to work. You know, one of the, anybody who's been in the music business for any length of time knows that you are, that part of your resume, if you will, comes from the products that you're associated, or the projects that you're associated with. And that's what Jaxsta is really about, is sort of surfacing those relationships and how they interconnect with some of our favorite records, with music that you like.
So why don't you take a couple of minutes and show people, because I'm not sure how many people who are tuned in today have actually ever seen Jaxsta, although they can now go to jaxsta.com and sign up. But
You can.
why don't you show us a little bit of the product?
I'll show you a very quick demo of this. I won't make it long, I promise. Okay, can you see my screen?
We can see, there we go.
Terrific. Are you seeing Jaxsta official music credits?
We are.
Yep.
Okay, terrific. So this is the platform at jaxsta.com. For people that really don't know where to start, we have a nice Explore tab that we're happy to let you look into on your own. I'm actually going to go right up to the search dialog box, and I've pre-populated a search for all of our favorite Billie Eilish, and we're going to go into Billie's page. So this is what you'll see. You'll note that on this page, there's quite a bit of information. One of the brand new features that we just released that we're really excited about is this in-page search that I'm circling right here. So now when you come to an individual entities page, and by the way, an entity on Jaxsta is not just an artist. An entity can be a producer, or it could be an engineer. So you'll note that when you come to this page, you have the facility to search within the page. You could search by album, for instance, or you could search by Billie Eilish as a main artist, or as a songwriter. You can also drill down. So I'm going to drill down to the level of an individual release, and this is the kind of information that you see. So we now have album information along with songwriter information, producer, engineer, performers. And this is all hyperlinked information, so you're able to move around in it and explore the provenance of music and the relationships. You can also go to the track list for this particular album. You can listen to music. We don't actually host music inside Jaxsta. We do affiliate links off to existing music services. So at the moment, we have Apple Music and Spotify integrated. We're hoping to add more. And you can drill down to the level of the track. And at the level of the track, you can see more information, as well as lyrics, which we've licensed from Lyric Find, and more information directly related to this particular release. If I'm interested in John Greenham, from here I might say, oh, I didn't realize John was part of this. I can go and look at John's page. So it's fun to move around like this. I guarantee if you haven't used this and you do decide to hop into it, you're going to get sucked down the rabbit hole. So
I was going to say, yeah.
Please give it a shot.
It's a time suck, that's for sure.
It is in a great way. I mean, you know, this kind of information can be invaluable for writing marketing plans, for sync, etc. And there's quite a bit of other information as well. I'll show you very quickly. There's an integrated news piece that displays context-sensitive news, so news about Billie Eilish. We also have an awards integration with both the Grammys and with RIAA Gold and Platinum, as well as more coming. And then we have the pro pieces. So we have an integrated charts piece that displays what's happening across a wide variety of different charts. As you can see, there's the ones we have integrated at the moment, by territory, by position. I can also set a chart alert, which allows me to get a daily or weekly chart email about any entity. And again, this doesn't have to be just an artist. This can be John Greenham, for instance, or John in Yellow, or any of the other tens of thousands of people who are involved in making these incredible records that we all enjoy. We have a contacts field. So you'll note that Billie Eilish's profile has a tick next to it, a blue tick. It's been claimed and verified. We don't yet have contacts detail for her, but it can be found, and you can see all this with Pro subscription. There's quite a bit of...
So it's constantly being up. You're constantly updating the information.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I could show you more, but that's probably a good hop-off point to give a general idea of what the product itself looks like.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks so much. So if I'm a DSP, I've licensed your database Obviously, I can anticipate how you might use that to increase engagement by subscribers. Can you talk a little bit about how some of the DSPs you're providing it to are in fact using it without giving away any proprietary secrets, unless you care to give away proprietary?
Well, what I can tell you is that we're in the process right now of those discussions, so I can't go into detail. But what I can tell you is maybe the most important thing, which is Jaxsta was built from the outset. We wanted to do something different. And we wanted to take an approach that we felt was one that would incentivize the rest of the music industry to address metadata shortfalls. So metadata that's financial metadata, that's pretty good in the record industry. If you are looking at ISRC information, or you're looking at the name of the track or the name of an artist, that's all information that needs to be used to pay. So that information isn't bad. What is not as great, and Jeff talked about this in his discussion about Mead, is the extra information. Who participated? Who were the songwriters? Who were the performers on the particular track or particular record in question? So all of that metadata it's soft metadata. It's explanatory metadata. And that's been less prevalent in the music industry. And so Jaxsta, when we built our, or in the process of building our API product, which we're doing right now, we built a revenue share into the product. And that really is brand new for something across the music industry. And the idea with doing that in compensating those entities that supply metadata to us, those official entities, is to incentivize them to improve their metadata. The better the metadata, the better everything from, Alexa and Siri and whatever else works. There just hasn't been much of a financial incentive to date to really dig in on this information. It's crucial that we get it right. It's not only crucial for the potential of earning money on it, but it's crucial for our industry to showcase and highlight the people that participate. So that's one of the things that makes Jaxsta really different. It's one of the things that I'm particularly proud of. I haven't been in music now for almost 30 years. And we built a product by music people. We built a tech product by music people, not a music product by tech people. We think that's an important distinction.
Great, thanks. So among the interesting things that have been happening recently, partly in response to the situation we all find ourselves in, has been some shifts in how people are engaging with music and how artists are engaging with their audience. For instance, when we've talked about this on earlier webinars, the rapid proliferation of live streamed video performances. There seems to be a rough consensus that that's something that is likely to outlast the current crisis, that even once we can all go back to live concerts, artists will continue to use that format to engage with their audience. And one of the things it does, Jeff, is it takes music to platforms that may have dealt with handled music to some degree before, like Twitch, but are now much more engaged with music and music rights owners and music performers. How do you, for an organization such as DDEX, how do you begin to incorporate some of those new platforms into the fold, as it were?
Yeah, it is a great question, and as and obviously an industry concern. And you're right. We talk about crossover type things too. Travis Scott playing Fortnite, and and different things like this, where you have gaming and also music and things interwoven. It didn't just start with Grand Theft Auto. It's been pervasive. One of the things that's been part of the DDEX mantra really has been to try to be technology neutral, and the idea to have standards that are able to be used in several different ways to deal with things like everything from the in-studio to the record release information to all that type of stuff. And MEAD is an important part of that, including for things like these new platforms that you're talking about. That's part of it, the standard itself. The other part is a communication and information piece of it. And we do different things around getting different stakeholders together, not just in the working groups, which work on specific issues, but also informative things. We hold broad industry-based meetings, and we invite people, even if they're not members of DDEX, to come hear about how it works, how they should fit in. We do active outreach. The Secretariat of DDEX, Mark Isherwood's very active in dealing with the new folks that arrive with new models, new ways of doing things, maybe some things that haven't even been contemplated yet. House concerts on Facebook, that type of stuff. We want to try to find ways to make sure that they fit within different buckets, or if there isn't a bucket for them, to find a way to get it organized so that they're in the pipeline. It's a sort of a multi-dimensional approach.
Hey, you mentioned the Travis Scott thing, and that was an integration, as it were, of with the Fortnite gaming platform, and his virtual concert a couple of weeks ago generated 27 million, I think it was 27 million views or viewers, which is a lot.
Yeah.
But the game industry is a huge industry, and the potential to tap that audience through some deeper integration between music and gaming seems very interesting and attractive. But that's sort of a whole new type of data, correct?
Yeah, for sure. Gaming and the rise of esports and all these other things are all connected, and you're right. And we're consuming more music and entertainment than ever before, and we're finding new ways to try to track it. But it's important that we have things like Jaxsta and the standards like DDEX in order for us to help identify and get these things organized in the right way. But you're quite correct. There's a cross-pollination that's happening at a scale I don't think it's ever happened before.
And Nick, how do you deal with that from a sort of credits point of view? You have artists creating essentially new types of product. It's not a recording necessarily as we have typically understood that term.
Right.
It's not strictly a live performance. It's these are new types of things. The live video streaming, the integration with interactive, immersive platforms. How do you incorporate that, and have you reached out to those other platforms about providing you whatever additional types of data you might need?
So just to clarify, and I don't think this was lost on anybody, but we aren't actually reaching out with music. Of course, we're only reaching out with the information, so only with the metadata. And you're right. Every time a new platform arises or starts to gain traction, it's on us to think about how could this platform be better? How could we help to improve it with metadata, with more metadata, or with the kind of metadata that we're focused on, the sort of soft metadata, if you will. And sometimes the answer is there's an obvious answer, and other times there's not an obvious answer. But in answer to your question, yes, we have reached out extensively inside the music business, and we're finding other ways that that metadata can be used. That's not just sort of the obvious, Alexa, for instance, if you who play guitar on this track, for instance. So that's a pretty cut and dried use. But there's also benefit for many entities inside the music industry of knowing who performed on a particular track, to be able to go and look at, for instance, who might be due revenue, for instance, on a particular recording, and whether or not that happened. So, that's feasible. One of the things that we don't do, just to be really clear and specific up front, is we don't store song splits. So song splits. So we're not an entity that facilitates payment, but we do show who played on a particular track, or who played on a particular album, and that can be really beneficial information. So yeah, there's all kinds of opportunities for metadata that that either benefit individual musicians, individual performers, or the industry as a whole. And that's really what we're trying to create at Jaxsta, is that missing tool, that missing IMDb for music that we've never really had on the music side. Or yeah, IMDb being the product that's already out there, IMDb for music being the one that is not out there until Jaxsta.
Unlike Jaxsta, IMDb, you can submit your own information.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yep.
Jaxsta actually deals only in official verified information.
And there's a reason for that. There's a very specific reason for that. So we don't want to, we're the rights owners that submit data to us are the definitive source of data and information. It might come to us through a delivery platform, might come direct, but we don't want to be out of sync with what they sent us. So when, for instance, if you go on the Jaxsta website and you note that there's an issue with a particular credit, maybe somebody's missing, there's a feedback tab on every page. You can say, hey, I'm supposed to be part of this credit. We then take that, send that back to whoever sent us the metadata. They correct it on their end in DDEX, send it back out to us, and that way we've closed the loop and we're not out of sync with what our partners have sent us. So yeah, it's something very different. So
we're just about out of time here, or running out of time. I'm going to put up a poll here it's just a 3-question poll to give folks out there a chance to weigh in on some of what we've been discussing. We've occasionally had a little bit of a technical glitch in launching these polls, so I'm going to try it now. Are people seeing a poll? You are, okay, first time. So while folks are filling that out, we have a few questions that have come in, a lot of Jaxsta questions. Interesting question from an anonymous attendee. Is there a Jaxsta offering for marketers versus producers, artists, engineers?
Great question, coming from coming to somebody who had a marketing company for 10 years, me. So the answer is not right now, but on the roadmap.
Stay tuned, type of thing.
Yeah, good question and good idea.
Question from Barry Coughing. Which DDEX program does Jaxsta follow?
So Jaxsta are proud members of DDEX. We're at all of the DDEX events. I'm not sure if he's asking about the specifics, but I can tell you that we're also on some of the working groups. So when DDEX moves forward, Jaxsta moves forward with it, or in concert with it. I hope that answers the question. I don't know if you're looking for a more technical answer. Certainly could follow up with a more technical answer if Barry would like a more technical response.
I do think that Jaxsta works in various working groups, like getting the technical stuff, but like BEAD and ERN and RIN. I think Jaxsta is quite involved with different elements, as you mentioned. Yeah.
I also noticed that that our CEO is stalking me in the chat.
No wonder you've been so circumspect.
You can certainly take, and I can't really watch the whole chat or I'd get totally distracted, but certainly anything that she says in the chat is the gold standard, and please listen to Jackie.
Oh, well handled, well handled. Smoothly done, Dick.
I'm an expert at that kind of thing.
How does Charles Datry wants to know, how does Jaxsta, if it does, interface with SAG AFM Digital Rights Supporting Musicians Fund?
So I did see that Jackie did respond to this particular question in the chat, but the answer is that we're keen to pull in data not only from the master's side, of the coin, but also from the publishing side of the coin, from PROs. We're keen to receive data from whoever will share data with us, and because we're not focused on creating a rights platform that takes us out of any kind of perceived competition with a PRO, with anybody else that might be interested in providing that kind of a rights platform, the store splits and that kind of information. We don't do that. We're just looking to provide the most comprehensive official platform for music metadata that we can do. And to do that, if you're an official supplier of metadata, then we want to talk to you. So I hope that answers the Charles' question.
So here's a question from Stefan Carl. I guess this is for Jeff. What interests are at play when creating a standard like DDEX? Why does it take 2 years to agree on one? And in fact, as Jeff mentioned before, 2 years is actually lightning fast for most standards processes. But could you talk a little bit about what are the why it's such an involved process to develop a standard, and particularly one that crosses so many different types of organization?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is a good question, and it's one of those things on the face of it. You think, why can't we just sit in the room and figure this out in 10 minutes and agree to it? The reality is, though, that a lot of it involves very complex engineering and workflow processes, so techniques and things that different companies and rights holders do to exchange the information, and also to provide clarity and the transparency needed so that there's trust and everything from audit trails to ways to really display the data in a meaningful way. 2 years is a long time. I appreciate that, but the reality is that people will discuss things, they'll come to a general consensus and go back and test it with some other internal subject matter experts to have new insights. Then we reconvene and redo it. The one thing that's really impressed me in my time, I've been associated with DDEX for a couple of years now, but as I mentioned, only been chair for a few weeks. But over the past couple of years, I've been really impressed with how often the working groups meet, even during COVID, because a lot of it's done virtually anyways. There's 3 or 4 working group meetings every week, and there is progress made around defining certain specific things. But they range from, how big is a field for the writer of a song? And at first blush, I think, oh, 2 or 3 people. But there's some songs that have 50, 60 participants. And so you got to start dealing with that. And then you separate them by a comma or by a semicolon. And Paul maybe wants to do a semicolon and Dick wants to do a comma. We have to figure that out. And it's as minute as that sometimes to larger, more complex things around alphanumeric and different alphabets and all those things.
And there are also sometimes sort of basic questions of sort of definitions, almost a taxonomy of things that, I've heard stories of how people have spent days and days and days in meetings trying to agree on a definition of a featured artist.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Featured artist, creator, performer, performance, all these things have gone towards building what's really become the lexicon of DDEX, and that's taken time. And then when new things come up that were maybe not envisioned 15 years ago. Don't forget when DDEX started, the first standard was ERN, which took a few years to get launched. That was in the shadow of all the changes that happened around the .com bubble and the early days of digital world. Think of how different it is now and how we consume things now compared to how we did when we had Blackberries.
And you know, one of the things that prior to Mead, one of the earlier things that you rolled out was an integration with IDER, which is a video standards body
Yes.
to make it easier to communicate between, you know, the video silo and the music silo. That must have been even more complicated on some level, although you were both obviously highly motivated to make
No,
it.
absolutely, and it's a great observation, and it ends up becoming almost metadata about the metadata,
Right.
and it takes it to another level, and it quickly becomes like a mind map with a number of different participants and different interests that you have to work through it. But you're correct with IDER, and there's other similar organizations around the globe that we interact with, and are working to bring this sort of into a broader tent, not just a DDEX tent, but all of us to work together.
Question from Patty Jones. This may have been addressed in the chat, but I guess it's for Dick. Does the green box include information on or for A&R and publishers? Or in the future, would you include a database for industry professionals? I guess
So these are all great questions. Right now, what typically appears in Jaxsta is what appears on the album credits. So you know, if you're in large measure, if you're in the album credits, and if you're also in the DDEX ERN feed that we receive, then that's the information that's going to appear on Jaxsta. I love that people are asking these kinds of questions. You know, how could my particular segment of music be represented in Jaxsta? You know, with 1,000 engineers, all of this stuff would get done tomorrow. You know, we're still a small company, but they're great suggestions. They're suggestions we considered and that we would love to work to implement, you know, at the earliest possible opportunity. The trick being that you know, we don't want to. Actually, I should say one other thing. So with Jaxsta Pro, with the Pro account, if, for instance, you have a relationship with an artist, let's say that there's a signed artist who's you know, signed to your label, or your manager, and there's an artist represented up on Jaxsta, or you're a producer and you want to claim your own profile with a Jaxsta Pro subscription. Any of those entities I just described can claim, you know, affiliated artists or affiliated entities, and then they can go in and they can update the photo image that's there. They can update the bio information. They can add links, full list of links, whatever you want, really. Anything from social links to purchase links, and you can add contact information. So that's the kind of information that you can add as the owner of a profile, or one of the owners of a profile in Jaxsta.
Okay, I'm going to share. I'm going to end the poll here and share the results. We asked folks, you know, just get a sense of how people are actually currently engaging in with music. How do you most often engage with interactive music streaming services? Via personal playlist, a third-party playlist, search request, you know, the Alexa Siri route, social media such as YouTube or all of the above, and all of the above is the biggest winner. But I'm a little bit surprised that the search or request approach, the Alexa approach, came in so low. Only about 2% of folks picked that as their most popular ways. So there's a lot of room to grow there, Jeff, and for both you guys for enabling that type of interaction. It seems to me that the richer you can make that, the more engagement you'll get with that. We asked, how has your method of engagement changed since we've all had to stay home, and there's been pretty much everybody's increased everything. They've increased their use of personal playlists. They've increased their use of third-party playlists. They say they've increased their Alexa and Siri searching. But the biggest jump was in the use of social media. So people are obviously starved and engaging in more ways. I'm going to go down to the last question. Which of the new or newly expanding forms of engagement that we were talking about earlier have you most excited? And again, all of the above leads the pack, but a lot of interest around live stream video, and it's a pretty good spread across all of the ways. Although I'm intrigued at least there are a few people out there who said they're excited about something else that I couldn't come up with to list as an option. But so those are pretty interesting. I want to thank Jeff and Dick, and I want to thank everybody for writing in questions. And I'm going to turn it back now to Ned. Ned, what do we have for Business of Music tomorrow?
Yeah, Paul. So for tomorrow's show, we have David Bloom, who's a senior contributor at Forbes, and he'll be interviewing Shara Senderoff, who's president of Raised in Space Enterprises, which is an investment fund. I think it'll be a really interesting conversation. Dick, Jeff, thanks a lot for your time today. Great show. See everybody tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for the time, everybody. Great seeing everybody.
Thanks.